Hey guys, this is Butch from the Vintage Media Grading Podcast. And before we start, I just want to give a shameless plug to Vintage Media Grading. VMG is your source for grading, authenticating, and slabbing your precious vinyl records. In addition, we offer a host of other services, including cleaning and sticker removal, as well as soft grading, which is a way to get your albums graded, but still allow you to spin your records and listen to your tunes. Come visit us at www.vmgvinyl.com to place your orders, or feel free to contact us at info@vmgvinyl.com. Hope you enjoy the podcast.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Media Grading, the podcast. This is episode 13, and I'm your host, Andrew Hoffman. I have here with me Butch, Paul, and Chad from VMG. How are you doing, guys?
Excellent.
Great.
It's been a long time since we've been here.
I know. It's good to be back in the studio again and talking vinyl. This episode was actually going to be a very special one. This is still a very special episode, but this is not how we intended to do this one. So we were actually scheduled to record this this podcast with Steve Albini, and unfortunately, he passed away before we were able to record it. So this is actually kind of a reminiscing video, one that we can look back at his work and not be able to ask him questions about it, but to be able to share our impressions of some of his previous releases and things that are interesting and perhaps even collectible. So does that sound like a good plan, guys?
Sounds like a plan.
I like it.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I was mortified when I heard that he passed away. Like, they had the big concert tour planned for Shellac, the new Shellac album. It dropped, and I listened to it, and I've had that on heavy rotation since it was released. It was really refreshing to hear like old style punk, but in a more modern setting, and the writers being more mature than some punk 20 some odd year olds that we usually get to listen to. So if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to the new Shellac record, do it. Steve and the guys did a really good job with that one. It has like an adolescent tone to it, but then there's a maturity in the lyrics and the character of the music. It's really, really, really good for that kind of music if you're into it. So, but it's sad that he wasn't able to see the release. He wasn't able to go on the tour. It was just a very sad day for me. Steve and I talked off and on over the years. I did a really nice article interviewing him back when I was in AAGS, and we have that on the blog on that site. But it was a sad day for sure. What all do you guys want to talk about with Steve?
Paul, why don't you
Other than In Utero?
Yeah, other than In Utero. I mean, we're going to talk about In Utero. That we kind of have to, but anything else that we want to talk about too would be great.
I mean, Albini was a pretty influential player in the early 80s. We know him more as a producer. He produced tons of music in the 90s and in the 80s, but he did release some really interesting vinyl in the early 80s with his original band Big Black. Drew, I know you're more of a fan of his actual music. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Big Black is actually a really good album. So actually, when I was first introduced to Steve Albini as a producer, it was when I listened to Slint. And that's what I wrote about in my first blog. I wanted to interview him because the moment I put that album on the turntable, like there was an entire cosmic realm in front of me. Like I felt this giant room with giant percussion and noises coming at me, and it was so dynamic. So that's what got me interested in him. Then I pulled up his first release, Big Black Lungs, and it has that same characteristic. And then I started listening to a lot of his other produced records and a lot of his own records, and I heard the same thing. It's like it's a similar characteristic, and you hear it very heavily in Utero as well, which are those big booming drums and open, airy feel, a little bit of grit and noise making in the background, but it all comes together musically. It's really cool. But Big Black is a great album. If you haven't listened to it, I have 3 copies of it. I'll talk a little bit more about it when it's my turn. But yeah, it's a great album.
Drew, did you get any used Band-Aids or razor blades or anything in your versions of Big Black Lungs?
Yeah, so I have the very first copy, the first pressing of Big Black Lungs. I have the second re-release, which is from '90s, and then I have the current release. I did not get razor blades or Band-Aids. I did get a picture though. It's just like a print of. It looks like it's signed. It's like a signed print. It's a handkerchief and a pair of pantyhose hung up to dry. I don't know if you guys could see it, but
just to fill in the listeners a little bit. Big Black's first album, Lungs, came out in '82, and when they first released it, Steve Albini hand cut and glued the first 100 or so albums. And when he was doing that, he just inserted random stuff like razor blades and Band-Aids, bumper stickers, blood, Bazooka Joe comics, all just random things were just filled into those albums. So if you have one of those early ones, you might have a cool little souvenir of some random garbage inside.
He probably just went to thrift stores and his trash can and just grabbed stuff. But it was very cool, and that makes it very collectible, in my opinion, because each one's a little bit different.
Yeah,
very cool.
Their second album, Bulldozer, which is also a 12-inch 45. They're both EPs. That one also has a cool limited release. The first 200 were in an etched steel case. So instead of just being in a cardboard sleeve, they're in etched steel. And they're like kind of like acid wash. They look, if you Google a picture of it, they look awesome. I've never seen one in person, but they look really cool.
Yeah, I've looked on eBay. There's like 2 of them the last time I looked. One is really clean. The acid etching is like perfect on the steel case, and it has all the contents and everything, I believe. And it's like crazy money. It's in multiple thousands of dollars. And then the cheapest one that's on there is $1,500, I think. And it's the whole steel case is kind of bent, and they said the record is warped also, and the acid etching isn't as nearly as clear and pronounced. So I don't know what was up with that one, but
that one just sold, Drew. Actually,
did it? Okay.
It sold a week ago today for $1,000.
You didn't have to buy it for me, Butch. That's nice of you.
Yeah. Well, I figured it's warped, so I bet buy that one too.
And prices on his stuff has really gone up dramatically since he passed away. There's, I know I haven't looked recently, but there weren't any available of either the early Lungs or the steel cover variant of Bulldozer Discogs for. Really, there were like 3, and then they were all purchased a few days after his death.
Yeah, I am really guilty of that, and it sounds horrible of me, but like as soon as I hear an artist passes away, I rush onto eBay, hoping nobody has seen the news yet, and I buy something signed of theirs. Like when Steve Harwell from Smash Mouth passed away, I just grabbed a guitar that was signed by the whole band, and it was only like $250. So I was like, the guitar is actually worth more than that. So I thought I'd grab it, and I did the same thing with Steve Albini. I have a signed drum head from Big Black. It's like got the Big Black logo on it, and then he autographed it, and it's comes with a certificate authentication and everything. But it's something I do. It's a probably not the greatest thing for me to do, but it's my way of commemorating people I looked up to.
Just
go ahead, Paul.
I had one more kind of early release that I thought it was interesting. It was a 7-inch called Rima Rima, and I thought it was cool because there was only 300 pressed, and it came in a magazine giveaway. So there was a magazine an indie magazine in the 80s called Forced Exposure. It was a music magazine, and for new subscribers of the magazine, they gave away this single of Big Black's Rima Rima, and only 300 made, so it's collectible. It was in the winter of '86 issue of that magazine, Forced Exposure. So that's if you're a Steve Albini completist, probably hard to find one for you.
Mm. And while we were talking about Bulldozer, if you are a Steve Albini completist, you might want to avoid the test pressing of Bulldozer, which had the original name of Bulldozer, which we won't repeat here.
What is it, Butch?
We're not allowed to repeat it on air. It is a racial epithet, the worst of the racial epithets. And so Steve Albini wanted to name the album "Hey Racial Epithet," but he was talked out of it. And thankfully he was talked out of it so that we don't have to mention it here. And but a completist may need it. Yeah, they might need it.
So it's only has that name on the test pressing, like in handwriting.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, I don't even know that test. I mean, according to Discogs, one person has it, and there's not even a picture of it. So,
yeah, usually these small indie labels that you only get a couple test pressings.
Find the owner, we can dox him, and immediately be canceled.
Right. Yep.
We're treading very lightly here, and possibly our 3 to 5 listeners may cancel us.
Right? Yeah, we might have to cut that part.
Just bringing the topic up.
Hey,
one thing to say about Steve, he was a very nice guy, like extremely nice. I came to him, a complete stranger and a nobody, and he gave me the time of day, and he wanted to talk music. He wanted to talk audio gear. He wanted to talk recording techniques, and that's what he loved. And, he loves people, but he's just very eccentric, and his eccentricities actually avail themselves in his recordings, the way he produces them, the way he performs them in his music. And I have to appreciate that. I don't say that I agree with all of his ideologies and everything, so we'll just get past that part of it. But musically speaking, he really was able to express himself and wanted to stand out as different. He never wanted to be, that pop person or the person that wanted that, really, album or radio friendly, type music to go out. But the key is he did have a lot of hits out there that he produced, and with the Pixies and with Nirvana and some others, and that's what is so amazing to me, is that he was able to take those eccentricities and turn them into very palatable music that made it very popular. So I have to give him that. It's hard to do in the record industry.
He was truly a purist for the music and the art, and he wasn't. I all I know is from interviews and things I've listened to or read, but it seemed like the Nirvana sessions, I think the record label wanted a different mix of one of the songs, and he basically said, now this is the best I can get it. If this is the best, it sounds the way the band wanted it. If you want something different, you're welcome to change it, but I'm not changing it.
Yeah.
So like he was really, not influenced by record labels or any corporate greed, anything like that. He was truly in it for the art of it all.
Yep. It's what made him so accessible too. Anybody could call him up at his recording studio, and anybody could book time and record with him. And that just made it so special. I really wish I would have had a chance to record an album in Chicago at a studio, but that will never happen now.
And I think he didn't even like being called a producer, right? Didn't he prefer being a sound engineer? He didn't really take producing credits on everything that he actually produced.
Yeah, he really wanted to lean toward humility. He was a humble guy, but he did have a lot more weight to or influence rather on the things that he was engineering, quote unquote, and helped shape or form the music. But he really let the band be their own. But he found ways to really help them express themselves that really conveyed well and contributed well to the music.
You guys have any other interesting actual vinyl pieces of his you want to talk about?
Well, I don't mind going. I just want to talk about Big Black again, just for a moment, just for any of the audiophile listeners that are out there. I wanted to just share my notes on the actual listening experience of all three pressings. I'll only take a couple minutes here. So the very first pressing, just to cut to the end, long story short, the very first pressing, which also happens to be the most expensive one, is the best sounding pressing. That one, I could very much tell that Steve Albini had his hand in how it was mastered to lacquer and how it was pressed. And it was just a very good, open, very dynamic record. Then, so that was on I think it's the Steelworker label. Is that accurate, Paul?
Ruthless.
Ruthless. Yes, yeah. I was thinking Steelworker because there's a song called Steelworker and there's a Steelworker on the logo. But then it was re-released in the 90s on Touch and Go. And that one, I don't know if he had much say in how it was mastered or whatever, because it was a completely different album. Unless my pressing was just a bad pressing, or maybe it was played a lot with a poor quality turntable and there's some groove damage or something. I don't know, but it just was very thin and flat, and it almost felt like somebody put a blanket over my speakers, and there's nothing really punching me in the gut like the very first pressing. Then the current one, if you look at the dead wax, it's the same exact dead wax as the 1990s Touch and Go pressing, but it has an additional etching on it. I have it in my notes. The etching adds a 9115.1, and everything else is identical. So they took the same metal work and then made new mothers, I think, off of it, and repressed it. And this one actually sounds better than the 90s release. So that's the reason why I'm thinking maybe it was a bad pressing or bad. I don't know. I don't know what the deal was there, but this one sounds a little bit better, but still very much pales in comparison to the first pressing. So if you can't find a first pressing, then the latest one from, I think it's 2018, would be the next best one to get.
Very cool.
As far as other albums, I'm going to leave In Utero for Chad to talk about.
Well, let me jump in with something so that I have something in. There's a 1997 shellac album called The Futurist, which is super cool in that it was never actually released. It was only given to friends, and the friends to whom it was given, they're actually listed on the front cover. And if your name was circled on the front cover, that's who the owner of the album was. And so it's super interesting. I'd love to get it. I'm looking on Pop Psych. It looks like someone did sell one, much to the dismay probably of Steve Albini and Shellac, because the whole purpose of this was that you weren't supposed to sell it. But I just think that's a super cool idea. You literally make an album that has the actual names of everybody who's allowed to own it, put it on the front cover. And if you own it and you're not one of those people, then you got some explaining to do.
Yeah, it looks like it last sold on Discogs just May 9th.
Oh,
yeah,
Cool.
And the lowest it's ever sold for in Discogs was 443, and the highest was 999.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of along the category of cool albums, like what when we did the White Stripes.
Yeah.
Similar. The idea that there's these albums out there that only a few people would own, and only people who are friends of the band or acquaintances of the band, and that would be a great show off piece.
Yeah.
Hey, I own this, and I'm not one of these people. I mean, it's kind of.
Were there any notable names on the cover?
Well, no, I'm looking through them now. So interestingly, I'm not seeing any. I mean, there's a lot of Albinis. There's a lot of people that are related to the band. I don't recognize anybody offhand. But I'll look through, and while you guys are talking, if I find one, I'll mention it.
Cool. That's very cool. I'll have to keep an eye out for one. There's an album that when I was searching Albini releases, one that I've never heard of before, and it's called Spare Snare. Have you guys ever heard of that band before?
No.
I never heard of them either. But the music's outstanding. It's like kind of poppy, punky kind of stuff, and then it has some like synthesizers in it. But I got the promo copy for super cheap. I think this was like $15. It's on orange vinyl, and the album is called Sounds, and it has a big thing recorded by Steve Albini. And I mean, the music on it's amazing, but the promo copy comes with a bunch of extra stuff. Like it has a felt slip mat. It has like a bunch of like picks and stuff from the band that was actually used by the band, and autographed card by the band. I don't think Steve signed it. And then it came with this DVD case that looks like I made it in my basement. And it has like the band actually wrote a thank you note to me and included my name on it. And it has like a bunch of like pictures of the band and just a ton of like DVDs. It's a really cool piece. So I think there's some more available on eBay if you guys want to check it out. But the music is great. I mean, I really like the sound, and it has the famous Albini quality to it, which is that really dynamic, open, airy, not overly processed sound to it. So that's what I liked about it as an audiophile. But also the extras were a cool added touch because I like collectibles. So so I just want to share that.
So just to interject, two names that I found that are owners of that Futurist album, which you would expect, are Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic. One you wouldn't expect, former Providence College. I don't even think she graduated, but she went to Providence College, my alma mater. Janine Garofalo is also one of the owners. Those are the only names I recognize on here.
The sports announcer?
No, Janine. What? No, Janine Garofalo, the
comedian,
former
right?
comedian, comedian actress.
Oh, I thought
you're thinking of Doris Burke.
Yeah.
Not even close.
That's not even close. That might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
She was a Saturday Night Live cast member.
She's a famous. She was a PC alum, a woman.
Yeah, I actually think Janine Garofalo left PC and didn't like her. She might have graduated. I don't remember, but she definitely went to Providence College. That's the only person I see on there. Yep. But yeah, no, Doris Burke weirdly did not get a copy of the album.
It's really strange. I wonder why she didn't.
I thought that was an odd choice.
So I know, like, we want to just talk about In Utero, for Chad's sake. So, Chad, what notes do you have on Nirvana In Utero? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Well, I have no notes in front of me, shockingly, because I prepare awfully for these podcasts. Other than what I do know is it was released on it was a transparent vinyl. That seems to be the one that we see the most as far as submissions, and there's quite a few sealed ones too. There doesn't seem to be any shortage of sealed original pressings of In Utero. So, but from a collectability standpoint, it's still one of their most well-known albums behind Nevermind, obviously.
How can somebody tell if it's a sealed? Do we know what the hallmark is on a sealed first pressing of In Utero?
So for the US 93 variant, that was released only on clear transparent vinyl. It's kind of like Coke bottle blue. It says clear, but it's has a slight tint. I think Coke bottle would be the right way to describe it.
More crystal clear Pepsi bottle?
Or crystal clear Pepsi.
Yeah.
Yep.
If anything, it would be Coke bottle green. Not
I think it's Coke bottle green. But yeah, I mean, so that album does show very well in our clamshell case when you have the disc out, because it does look really nice with that Coke bottle clear vinyl. But then, we do get a lot of the sealed copies of those. So,
and the original, the 93 version should say in small text right beneath the In Utero on the front cover, special limited edition disc. And I don't believe that's on subsequent re-releases.
Yeah, so that's the best way to tell is that small print on the front bottom. Do any of you guys have a open copy of that record, or you only have sealed records?
I think I do. I definitely have a sealed version, but I think I have an open version as well.
Yeah, I might want to borrow that if you'd be willing to let me, because I want to compare it to. I have the 20th anniversary and the 30th anniversary copies, and I wanted to see how they compare to the first pressing. I just don't have a first pressing yet, so. But cool. If anyone wants to know, the 20th anniversary edition is the one that Steve Albini was involved with the remastering, and it was remastered on direct. It was like direct to disc, not the DMM, which is like a process. Instead of cutting to lacquer, they cut to copper plate, and it's supposed to add. It's got a cleaner sound to it. It's usually a little brighter, but it's got a lot more dynamics, in my opinion. And that's exactly what you hear on that 20th anniversary one. The 30th anniversary one, it's in the box. You can get it in the box set too. My copy's in the box set. It sounds good as well, but it's not nearly as good as the 20th anniversary. So if you're going for sound quality, get the 20th anniversary one, unless that first pressing is better. I've not had a chance to hear that one yet. And then if you just have access to the 30th anniversary one, you're going to be completely fine. It's very mild differences.
All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
and he's that everyone knows In Utero that he produced. That's probably what he's most well known for as a producer. But he did produce a lot of kind of famous '90s bands at some point or the other. He produced Helmet, which was kind of a famous alt rock band. Tad, very famous band cover of the 80s and early '90s. He produced Urge Overkill, who actually Butch and I were just talking about. They're most well known for their cover of Neil Diamond's "Oh, You'll Be a Woman Soon" on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
Yep.
He produced them. He produced the Pixies debut, which he's also really well known for. He produced Hum, The Breeders, Fugazi, PJ Harvey. So big 90s bands. But one kind of big album that everyone, at least I always overlooked, I didn't even realize he did produce it. He produced Bush's follow-up to 16 Stone. He produced Razor Blade Suitcase.
Oh, I didn't know
which was
that.
kind of a big album. And Bush was 16 Stone was huge. It was,
yeah.
And the follow-up was also huge. So that was one of his kind of later ones, late 90s, 96.
I am not ashamed to say that I love 16 Stone, and Razor Blade Suitcase more than any other album reminds me of being at your house, Chad, and being in like your living room and basement playing Super Mario World on N64? Yeah. One Christmas you got Super Mario World, and we went over like Christmas break and played it like every day. And I also bought Razor Blade Suitcase then. So whenever I hear Swallowed or Greedy Fly, I think of Mario 64.
Nice.
It's funny. That album I have virtually no memory of. 16 Stone obviously was that was a big part of the legendary 95 summer. So
yeah, but I mean, Swallowed, right?
Oh,
Swallowed,
yeah. I know. And I actually think, did you go? We went. We saw Bush like probably the summer '96.
I didn't go to that. Bush actually came to Providence to PC when I was there, and I was a huge Bush fan, and somehow I managed not to go. By the time they came, this is like just classic, like loser. This is what I teach my kids not to be. Like, it's what my oldest son is totally not. Like, but I was a loser. Like, I liked Bush, but by 1999, they had become kind of uncool. And so I didn't go because it would have been uncool to go. Whereas, like, the cool thing now is just to go to the things you like, not to, judge them by what other people think are cool. And I was just such a loser that I didn't go. What a loser.
We'll definitely hold that against you.
Oh, we finally agree on something.
Yeah. Was it Alanis Morissette in Bush? I think it was this.
No, that was you're mixing up my concerts. Alanis Morissette and Radiohead.
Oh,
was the first concert I ever went to. Great Woods,
yeah,
I believe.
I definitely didn't go to Bush. I remember working with Jokaphone the next day and him telling me about it, as we're just naming. I feel like Bill Simmons just naming random friends that nobody knows who they are. If you ever listen to Bill Simmons' podcast, he just like names random friends as if anybody knows who Joe House is. Like, who is, he's done that for like 20 years. We'll just name a random acquaintance and, think it makes good radio. But I remember talking to him about it and him being all excited that they played Alien, which was one of my favorite songs of.
Yes,
16.
I actually remember him being fired up about it. That whole concert was a huge bust. I remember we loved Bush, 16 Stone. Then tickets went on sale, so we got tickets, and then we thought girls would want to come with us because he was a good-looking man, a good-looking front man. And then like all of that fell through, and we ended up just going with a mishmash of like random people that we tried to like sell the tickets to.
So really, weirdly, more, this is how stupid we are as teenagers, because obviously more girls were going to go with you to the Alanis Morissette concert than we're going to go with you to the Bush concert.
No, we were obviously young and foolish, and then we grew up and realized that what girls really want to see is Poison. And we had no problem getting a U-Haul full of girls, literally, to drive up and go see Poison.
We'll save that for the hairband episode, which we're definitely going to do at some point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, do any of you all have Razor Blade Suitcase from Bush on vinyl,
I have
the
it.
first pressing?
Yeah,
I have
it. Wow. Okay, cool.
I do have it. I ordered it, and it was, when I wasn't vetting my purchases well enough, and it came with a big creased corner, which is kind of annoying. But,
last week I got a CD copy of Razor Blade Suitcase.
Oh yeah,
a friend of mine. I'm just gonna do the same thing. Kelly called me up and said she's cleaning out her brother's storage unit and said he has some CDs. Do you want them? I'm like, how many are there? She's like, there's like a box, and I'm like, what kind are they? Are they like old Christmas albums, or are they like rock and jazz? And she's like, I see REO Speedwagon. I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, worst that could happen, I take them to Goodwill. And they come, and it's like 200 90s alternative
Nice.
albums, and they're like all in clean shape. I'm not a CD guy that much, but it reminds me of my old CD collection. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna have a little collection there. It's a lot of those albums too were meant like the bands meant them to be on CD. So I'm okay with that. It'll bring back memories. So
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, I did not know that about Razorblade Suitcase and Steve Albini. Thank you, Paul, for educating me on that. So awesome.
Yeah, so you guys want to pick a album for the VMG 100, which for our listener is our choice every week as to which album would be most crucial to have in your collection if you are trying to create the perfect vinyl collection. What is your vote?
I think In Utero is too easy to go with.
Yeah.
And we can save that for something else. There is one more album actually I didn't talk about, but it was released only in the UK, and Big Black is not on the name at all. They only released 2,000 copies. It's called You Got It All, Dad, and We're Gonna Hit. And for some reason, they didn't attribute it to Big Black. Their name is not on the album at all. And there's only 2,000 numbered copies. So that's kind of a cool one. Other than the debut, I'd probably go with the first pressing of Big Black, of Lungs.
Yeah, I was thinking Lungs as well.
All right, that sounds good.
Just because of the collectability, having like the random items in it, and it has a really cool label and everything. But I don't know. It's up to you. And Chad.
I think we let Drew make the final pick. I was going to say either Lungs or Bulldozer. I think both of those are very cool. Drew, you musically, I think, are the biggest fan, so we'll give you the honors of making the pick.
All right, I'm going to go with Big Black Lungs for our 100.
Cool.
Sounds good. Book it.
Awesome. Well, this was a nice discussion. Hopefully it was a nice honor to Steve Albini, and keep collecting his stuff. His music is very good. His discography for the albums he produces very good. You probably heard songs on the radio that you never realized he was involved with. Go check them out. Wikipedia will tell you what all those albums are, or Discogs. It definitely we show some honor and respect for a very talented musician and recording engineer. So we're gonna miss you, Steve. All right, team. Thank you. I think that wraps up the episode. We'll see you next time for episode 14 of Vintage Media Grading, the podcast. Until then, have a good one.